Hi everyone, welcome back to Pine Hat. I hope you're all doing well. Tonight, we're going to do something a little different. We're not going to examine mysteries or decode ciphers. We're going to talk about feelings. Specifically, we're going to talk about every single time Gravity Falls made you feel bad for Stanley Pines. Because Stan is, without question, one of the most tragic characters in animation history. And the genius of Gravity Falls is that it hides this tragedy beneath layers of comedy. Stan is the grumpy conman, the cheapskate who overcharges tourists, the gruff uncle who pretends not to care. Every joke about his selfishness, his scheming, his casual disregard for the law makes us laugh. But then the show reveals what's underneath, and suddenly all those jokes become something else entirely. This is going to take a while, so settle in, get comfortable. We're going to go through the entire series moment by moment and examine every scene that broke our hearts. But before we begin, I'd just like to kindly ask you all to subscribe. It's completely free and it really helps us improve the videos for this wonderful community we've managed to build. Anyway, that's enough. Let's begin. When we first meet Stan Pines in the pilot episode, Tourist Trapped, he seems like a simple character. He's the greedy uncle who runs a tourist trap called the Mystery Shack. He overcharges visitors for fake attractions. He makes up ridiculous stories about supernatural creatures that are clearly just taxidermy animals glued together. He's lazy, cheap, cynical, and seems to view his great-niece and great-nephew as little more than free labor. This is the Stan we're meant to see. This is the mask he's been perfecting for 30 years. The show wants us to laugh at Stan in these early episodes. He's the butt of jokes about his greed, his tackiness, his complete lack of shame. When he charges tourists $5 to see the world's most distracting object, which is literally just a spinning thing, we're supposed to laugh at how shameless he is. And we do laugh because it is funny. Alex Hirsch, who voices Stan, delivers every line with perfect comedic timing. Stan's schemes are absurd. His lies are transparent. His contempt for his customers is barely concealed. But even in that first episode, if you look carefully, there are hints that something else is going on. Stan lives alone in a house that's too big for one person. The Mystery Shack is not just a tourist trap, it's also his home. And that home is cluttered with decades of accumulated junk, but there are no photographs on the walls, no evidence of friends or family, no indication that anyone has ever cared about Stan or been cared about by him. He takes in his great-niece and great-nephew for the summer. On the surface, this seems like a favor to their parents, who want free babysitting. Stan even says this explicitly. But think about it for a moment. He didn't have to agree. A man who cares only about himself, who views every interaction as a transaction, would have refused. What does he get out of having two kids around? The answer, which we won't understand until much later, is that Stan is desperately lonely. He's been alone for 30 years, and when the opportunity arose to have family in his life, even temporarily, even family he'd never met before, he said yes. And then there's the vending machine. At the end of the first episode, after the kids have gone to bed, we see Stan doing something strange. He approaches the vending machine in the gift shop and enters a code. The machine swings open to reveal a hidden staircase leading down into darkness. Stan descends, and we see him standing before a massive machine, working on something he clearly doesn't want anyone to know about. This is our first clue that Stan is not what he seems. The cryptogram hidden in the end credits of that episode, when decoded using the Caesar cipher the show teaches us, literally says, Stan is not what he seems. The show is telling us from the very first episode that everything we think we know about this character is wrong. The greedy conman is a disguise. The grumpy uncle is a performance. There's something underneath, something secret, something that requires a hidden basement laboratory. But we don't understand yet. We won't understand for almost 3 years of real-world time, 40 episodes of build-up and hints and carefully planted clues. We'll laugh at Stan for most of that time, thinking we understand him, we don't understand anything. Let's talk about the Mystery Shack itself, because understanding the shack helps us understand Stan. The Mystery Shack is a tourist trap. It sells fake supernatural experiences to gullible visitors. Stan has filled it with exhibits like the Sasquatch, a Sasquatch wearing underpants, the Jackalope, obviously fake, and various other attractions that are clearly just cheap props and taxidermy. On the surface, this seems like evidence of Stan's dishonesty and greed. He's deceiving people for money. He's a con man. This reading of Stan's character is reinforced throughout the early episodes. He cheats at cards, he steals, he lies constantly. But consider the shack from another angle. Stan has been running this business for 30 years. In all that time, the shack has never become particularly successful. It's always on the edge of financial ruin. Stan works long hours, does all the maintenance himself, and barely scrapes by. If Stan were really motivated purely by greed, wouldn't he have moved on by now? 30 years is a long time to stick with a failing business. A true conman would have cut his losses and found a better score decades ago. But Stan can't leave the shack, because underneath it is the portal. The Mystery Shack isn't just Stan's business, it's his brother's house. It's where Ford lived and worked before he was pushed through the portal. It's where the portal is located, the machine Stan has spent 30 years trying to fix. Stan can't leave because leaving would mean abandoning his mission. Every dollar he earns from tourists isn't going into his pocket. It's going into portal research, the equipment, the power bills, the materials, the taxes and fees that keep the property in his name. The Mystery Shack isn't a scam. It's a 30-year fundraising campaign for an interdimensional rescue mission. And Stan has never told anyone because he can't. Because the moment anyone discovers what he's really doing, his mission is over. So he plays the greedy conman. He lets people think he's motivated by money. It's safer that way. No one suspects that a cheap, selfish old man is actually engaged in the most ambitious rescue operation in human history. Throughout the first season, the show drops hints about Stan's inner life. These moments are easy to miss on first viewing because they're buried beneath comedy. They're small, a look, a pause, a line reading that's slightly off, but once you know what to look for, they're devastating. Let's go through them carefully. In the episode The Legend of the Gobblewonker, the third episode of the series, Stan tries to take Dipper and Mabel on a fishing trip. This should be a simple comedic setup, grumpy old man forced to spend time with energetic kids. But watch how Stan talks about fishing. He's genuinely excited, not in an over-the-top way, but in a quiet, hopeful way. He's prepared a cooler full of sodas. He calls the kids my fishing buddies. He's planned this trip. When Dipper and Mabel ditch him to go monster hunting with Suze, watch Stan's face. For just a moment, before he covers it with bluster, there's hurt there. He was looking forward to this. He wanted to spend time with them. This is our first glimpse of the real Stan. Not the con man, but the lonely old man who finally has family in his life and doesn't quite know how to handle it. The episode Headhunters is where things get really interesting. In this episode, Mabel creates a wax figure of Stan as a gift. Stan is delighted by this. He dotes on the figure. He puts it in a place of honor. He treats it like a treasured possession. When the figure is murdered, decapitated by other wax figures who have come to life, Stan's reaction is outsized. He holds a funeral. He gives a eulogy. He cries. The joke is that Stan is so vain, so self-absorbed, that he mourns a statue of himself. We're supposed to laugh at his ego, but think about it differently. Stan has been alone for 30 years. His twin brother, the person who knew him best, has been gone. He has no friends. He has no family. He spent 3 decades in isolation, hiding his true self from everyone. And then Mabel makes him a gift. Not because she wants something from him, but because she cares about him. She spent time and effort creating something just to make him happy. That wax figure might be the first real gift Stan has received in 30 years. The first time someone has thought of him, done something for him, shown him affection without expecting anything in return. And then it's destroyed. Of course Stan mourns it. Of course he's devastated. He's not mourning a statue. He's mourning the proof that someone cares about him. In the episode Boss Mabel, we see the extent of Stan's financial struggles. Mabel takes over running the Mystery Shack for a day and discovers that the business is constantly on the verge of failure. Stan works himself to exhaustion trying to keep it running. He sleeps on a cot in the gift shop some nights. He eats expired food. He never spends money on himself. Why is he so desperate to keep this failing business alive? A normal person would have given up years ago, would have found a regular job, would have lived a normal life. But Stan can't give up because the portal is in the basement. Because every day the shack stays open is another day he can work on rescuing Ford. Because if he loses the shack, he loses everything. Stan's apparent greed, his obsession with money, his constant schemes to bring in customers isn't actually about the money. It's about the mission. Every dollar is fuel for the portal. Every tourist is funding an interdimensional rescue operation, and Stan can never explain this. He can never tell anyone why he's so desperate. He just has to seem greedy and hope no one looks too closely. The episode Carpet Diem contains one of the most quietly devastating moments in the entire first season. Dipper and Mabel discover a secret room in the Mystery Shack. The room is full of strange objects, experiments, souvenirs, artifacts from decades of living in Gravity Falls. Among these objects, almost unnoticed, is a pair of glasses with square frames. Stan finds the glasses, and for just a moment his mask slips completely. We see him holding the glasses, staring at them with an expression of profound, undisguised grief. His hands tremble slightly. His jaw tightens. For perhaps 5 seconds, we see not the grumpy conman, but a man in the grip of ancient, unbearable loss. Then he puts the glasses away. He says nothing. He pretends nothing happened. The moment passes. At this point in the series, we don't know what these glasses mean. We don't know they belonged to Ford. We don't know that Stan has been keeping his brother's possessions safe for 30 years, preserving them for the day when Ford comes home. But we can see the pain. We don't understand it, but we can see it. And that pain is real and deep and not at all funny. This is what makes rewatching Gravity Falls such a different experience. On first viewing, this moment is strange and slightly confusing. On second viewing, knowing what we eventually learn, it's absolutely heartbreaking. Stan has been alone for 30 years, but he's kept Ford's glasses. He's kept Ford's house. He's kept everything, waiting for the day his brother returns. And every time he stumbles across one of these reminders, every time he finds a pair of glasses or sees an old photograph or walks past the room where Ford used to work, he experiences that grief all over again. 30 years of this. 30 years of constant reminders of what he lost and what he's trying to get back. 30 years of pain that he can never share with anyone. Here's a detail that seems insignificant but actually reveals everything about Stan's secret identity. In the episode The Legend of the Gobble Wonka, we see Stan's car. The license plate reads STNLYMBL. Most viewers, on first viewing, pass this as Stanford Mobile. After all, Stan is supposedly named Stanford. Stanford Mobile makes sense, but that's not what it says. It says Stanley Mobile. This is the show's 3rd episode, and the show is already telling us Stan's real name. He's not Stanford. He's Stanley. The license plate on his own car reveals that he's been lying about his identity this entire time. Why would a man use a false name? Why would someone pretend to be their own brother for 30 years? We won't learn the answer until much later, but the clue is there from almost the beginning. Stan isn't just hiding what he does in the basement, he's hiding who he is. Every time someone calls him Stanford, every time he signs that name on a document, every time he looks at his brother's name and pretends it's his own, he's reminded of what he lost and what he did. Every use of the false name is a small act of sacrifice, a constant reminder that he gave up his own identity for this mission. Throughout the first season, observant viewers might notice a recurring visual detail. There's a photograph in the Mystery Shack that shows a young Stan with his arm around someone. But that someone has been cut out of the picture. There's just a hole where a person should be. The show never draws attention to this. It's just there, in the background, easy to miss. The missing person is Ford. Stan kept the photograph but couldn't bear to look at his brother's face every day. So he cut it out. He removed the reminder while keeping the evidence of their connection. Think about what this means. Stan loves his brother so much that he's spent 30 years trying to rescue him, but he also can't handle being reminded of Ford's absence. The pain is too great. So he compromises. He keeps the photo but removes the face. This is a man at war with his own emotions, a man who loves so deeply that it hurts and who has developed elaborate coping mechanisms just to get through each day. For 30 years, Stan has walked past this photograph. For 30 years, he's seen that hole where his brother's face should be, every single day. The episode Dreamscaperers changes everything about how we understand Stan Pines. In this episode, the villain Gideon Gleeful summons Bill Cipher, a dream demon, to enter Stan's mind and steal the combination to his safe. Dipper, Mabel, and Suze follow Bill into Stan's mindscape to stop him. Inside Stan's mind, we see his memories. And for the first time, we see Stan's childhood. We see young Stan and young Ford, clearly identical twins, clearly close. We see them together, happy, before whatever happened to drive them apart. And we see something else, a memory that Bill Cipher uses as a weapon. Stan's father yelling at him, telling him he's worthless, telling him he'll never amount to anything. The specific words aren't as important as the feeling they convey, a child being told by his parent that he has no value. This is where everything comes from. Stan's greed, his constant need to prove himself through money and success, comes from a father who taught him that money equals worth. Stan's mask of toughness, his refusal to show vulnerability, comes from learning early that vulnerability leads to pain. Stan's desperate need to rescue Ford, to do something extraordinary, comes from a lifetime of being told he's the lesser twin. Bill Cipher uses this memory because it still hurts. Decades later, after 30 years of living alone, after spending his entire adult life on a single mission, Stan still believes what his father told him. He still thinks he's worthless. The tragedy of Stan Pines isn't just what happened to him. It's what he believes about himself because of what happened to him. He has internalized the cruelty he experienced as a child. He has made his father's verdict into his own self-image. And that belief drives everything he does. He works so hard because he doesn't think he deserves rest. He never asks for help because he doesn't think anyone would want to help someone like him. He hides his true self because he's convinced that if people saw the real Stan, they would be disappointed. Let's take a moment to examine how Stan relates to Dipper and Mabel throughout the first season, because it reveals a lot about who he really is. On the surface, Stan treats the kids as a nuisance or as free labor. He makes them work in the gift shop. He dismisses their concerns. He seems annoyed by their presence. But look at what he actually does, as opposed to what he says. When Dipper and Mabel are in danger, Stan protects them, every time, without hesitation. In Dreamscaperers, when Bill Cipher threatens the kids, Stan's reaction is immediate and fierce. He doesn't know what's happening, but he knows his kids are in trouble, and that's all that matters. He calls them his kids, not my niece and nephew, his kids. Stan has no children of his own. He never married. He spent his prime years alone working on a secret project that consumed his entire life. And now, unexpectedly, he has 2 kids in his life who depend on him. He doesn't know how to express this. He's been alone so long that he's forgotten how to show affection in normal ways. So he shows it through action instead of words. He gives them jobs because that's how you show someone you need them. He includes them in his schemes because that's how you show someone you trust them. He grumbles about their presence because admitting he loves them would make him vulnerable. And vulnerability is dangerous. Watch the small moments. Watch how Stan looks at Dipper and Mabel when they're not looking at him. There's tenderness there. There's wonder. He's not sure he deserves this, these 2 bright kids who have stumbled into his lonely life, but he's going to hold on to them as long as he can. As Season 1 progresses, the hints about Stan's true nature become more frequent and more substantial. The show is preparing us for the revelation to come, laying groundwork that will make the eventual twist feel both surprising and inevitable. In Gideon Rises, the Season 1 finale, Stan loses the Mystery Shack. Gideon, gleeful, using dark magic and underhanded tactics, takes possession of the shack and evicts the Pines family. Watch Stan's reaction to losing the shack. This isn't just a businessman losing his business. This is a man losing everything he's worked for over 30 years. The shack isn't just a building, it's the location of the portal. Without the shack, Stan can't complete his mission. Without the shack, Ford is lost forever. There's a moment, brief but unmistakable, where we see genuine despair on Stan's face. Not anger, not determination, but despair. The look of someone who has just watched their life's work crumble. He recovers quickly, putting on his mask again, making jokes, pretending everything will be fine. But that moment of raw emotion tells us how high the stakes really are. Stan eventually gets the shack back, of course. But the terror of almost losing it, the possibility that 30 years of work could be erased in an instant, haunts him into the 2nd season. Season 2 begins with Scary Oak, an episode that establishes a new status quo. The portal is almost complete. After 30 years of work, Stan is finally close to bringing Ford home. But government agents are investigating the shack. The supernatural activity in Gravity Falls has attracted official attention. Men in black suits are asking questions, monitoring the property, getting closer to discovering Stan's secret. This creates enormous tension for Stan. He's so close. After everything, after 30 years of isolation and sacrifice, he's almost there. And now, at the worst possible moment, the authorities are closing in. Watch Stan in this episode. His nervousness isn't played purely for comedy. There's real fear there. He's been operating in secret for 3 decades, and now the secret might be exposed. Everything might fall apart just before he reaches the finish line. The episode also shows Stan lying to the kids about what's in the basement. When Dipper and Mabel ask about the secret room behind the vending machine, Stan deflects. He can't tell them the truth. Not yet. Maybe not ever. This is painful because we can see how much Stan wants to trust them. We can see him wanting to share his burden with someone after carrying it alone for so long. But he can't. The mission is too important. The secret is too dangerous. So he lies to the only people in the world he truly cares about. And every lie is a small betrayal, a small wound to the relationship he's been building with them. The episode Into the Bunker takes us into the underground facility where Ford used to conduct his most dangerous research. We see more of Ford's world, more of the life Stan has been trying to restore. Stan isn't in this episode much, but his presence is felt throughout. Every artifact Dipper and Mabel discover is something Stan has been protecting. Every secret they uncover is something Stan has been keeping, and we see more evidence of what Stan is working toward. The journals, the portal, the massive scientific apparatus in the basement, all of it is part of an elaborate project that Stan has been maintaining for 30 years. By this point in the series, attentive viewers have pieced together the broad outlines of the mystery. There's a portal. There's someone missing. Stan is trying to bring that person back. What we don't know yet is the full story, who the missing person is, why they're missing, and what it cost Stan to pursue this mission. And then we reach Not What He Seems, widely considered one of the greatest episodes in animation history, the episode that changes everything. The episode begins with government agents finally making their move. They arrest Stan, accusing him of stealing nuclear waste and operating dangerous equipment. They reveal that the man they know as Stanford Pines is using a false identity, that the real Stanford Pines died in a car crash years ago. Dipper and Mabel are confronted with evidence that their beloved Grunkle is not who he claims to be. The man they've trusted, the man they've come to love, might be a fraud, a liar, a criminal, possibly worse. This is the moment the show has been building toward for almost 2 years of real-world time. Everything we've wondered about Stan, every suspicious behavior, every mysterious hint, it all comes to a head here. The evidence against Stan is damning. He has fake IDs, he has newspaper clippings about crimes, he has been lying about his identity for decades. From Dipper's perspective, from any rational perspective, the conclusion is clear. Stan cannot be trusted. But Mabel doesn't care about evidence. Mabel has spent the summer with Stan. She's seen him protect her and Dipper. She's seen him sacrifice for them. She's seen the real Stan beneath the gruff exterior, and she knows that whatever he's doing, he's not a bad person. The climax of the episode puts Mabel in an impossible position. The portal is activating. Reality is destabilizing. Mabel has her hand on a button that will shut everything down and might save the world. And Stan is begging her not to press it. He can't explain. There's no time. All he can say is, "Please, Mabel, trust me." And she does. She pulls her hand back from the button. The portal completes its activation. The fabric of reality tears open, and through the rift steps a man who looks exactly like Stan. Stanford Pines. The real Stanford Pines. The author of the journals. Stan's twin brother returned from 30 years in another dimension. Stan falls to his knees. He's crying. After everything, after 30 years of working alone, after sacrificing his name and his identity and his entire life, his brother is home. And we finally understand. The revelation in Not What He Seems doesn't just surprise us. It transforms everything we thought we knew about the show. The man we've been watching isn't Stanford. He's Stanley, Ford's twin brother. He's been using Ford's name, living in Ford's house, continuing Ford's work, all because 30 years ago he accidentally pushed his brother through a dimensional portal and has spent every day since trying to bring him back. This is the twist that breaks us. Not because it's shocking, although it is shocking, but because it recontextualizes every single thing we've seen. Every joke about Stan's greed becomes a reminder that he's been scraping together money to power an interdimensional portal. Every joke about Stan's laziness becomes a reminder that he's been working in secret every night for 3 decades, teaching himself physics and engineering, solving problems that should have been impossible. Every joke about Stan's selfishness becomes a reminder that he gave up his entire life, his name, his identity, his future, his chance at happiness, for the chance to save his brother. Stan isn't the selfish conman we thought he was. He's the most selfless character in the entire show, and he hid that selflessness behind a mask of gruffness because he didn't think he deserved credit, because he blamed himself for Ford's disappearance, because he believed his father was right, that he really was worthless, that no one would care about his sacrifice even if they knew. The episode following the portal reveal is a tale of 2 Stans, and it is perhaps the most emotionally devastating half-hour of television ever created. In this episode, Stan tells the full story of what happened. We see everything: the childhood, The separation, the accident, the 30 years of isolation. Let me walk you through it, because every detail matters. Stanley and Stanford Pines were born in Glasshard Beach, New Jersey in the 1950s. They were identical twins, inseparable from birth. Stan was the outgoing one, the troublemaker, the one who could talk his way into or out of anything. Ford was the quiet one, the genius, the one who would rather read than play. Despite their differences, they were best friends. They spent their childhood together, exploring, adventuring, dreaming. Their favorite dream was the Stan-O War, a broken-down boat they were fixing up in preparation for a lifetime of adventure. They were going to sail around the world together, just the two of them, brothers against the universe. But Ford was special in a way Stan wasn't. Ford was brilliant, a genuine prodigy. He could have gone anywhere, done anything. And he had a ticket out, a perpetual motion machine he'd built for a science fair, a device that could have earned him a scholarship to his dream college. The night before the science fair judges came to evaluate Ford's project, Stan snuck into the school to look at it. He wasn't trying to sabotage anything, he was just curious. But he accidentally damaged the machine. And when the judges came, it didn't work. Ford didn't get his scholarship, and their father blamed Stan. The scene where Philbrick Pines confronts his sons is one of the most painful in the entire series. He doesn't yell, not really. He's cold, controlled, disappointed. "You cost our family potentially millions of dollars," he says to Stan. "Until you make us a fortune, you're not welcome in this household." And he kicks Stanley out at 17 years old for an accident. Watch the scene carefully. Ford says nothing. Ford, who has always been Stan's best friend, says nothing while their father throws Stan out of the only home he's ever known. Ford doesn't defend his brother. Ford doesn't argue. He just stands there. This is the first betrayal, the first crack in their relationship. Ford might not have agreed with their father's decision, but he didn't oppose it either. And Stan never forgot that. After being kicked out, Stan spent the next 10 years trying to prove himself, trying to make that fortune his father demanded, trying to become someone worth loving. He failed, again and again and again. We see flashes of Stan's lost decade in the episode. He sold products that didn't work. He was arrested in multiple states. He was banned from entire countries. He lived in his car. He ate stolen food. He hit rock bottom and kept falling. Everything his father said about him seemed to be coming true. Stan was a screw-up, a failure, someone who would never amount to anything. And during all of this, Ford never reached out. 10 years of silence from the brother who had been his best friend. 10 years of wondering if Ford had ever really cared about him at all. This is important to understand because it shows us what Stan was carrying when Ford finally did call. A decade of failure, a decade of believing he was worthless, a decade of feeling abandoned by the one person who was supposed to love him unconditionally. Then Ford calls. After 10 years of silence, Ford reaches out to his brother. He sounds scared. He sounds desperate. He says he needs Stan's help. And Stan, despite everything, despite the years of abandonment and the wounds that never healed, drops everything and drives across the country to help his brother. Because that's who Stan is. Because despite it all, he still loves Ford. But Ford didn't call for a reunion. Ford didn't call to apologize or reconnect. Ford called because he needed something. He needs Stan to take one of the journals and hide it somewhere far away. He explains, in frantic terms, that he's built something dangerous, that he's been manipulated by a demon named Bill Cipher, that the portal must never be activated, and the only way to ensure that is to scatter the journals that contain the activation instructions. Stan didn't come all this way to be a delivery boy. He came to see his brother. He came hoping, after 10 years, that maybe they could be a family again. "I came all this way," Stan says, "and you just want me to leave?" Ford's response is brutal. "You're a screw-up, Stan. You've always been a screw-up. The only thing you're good for is taking this journal and disappearing." Those words, after 10 years of trying to prove himself, after driving across the country hoping for reconciliation. His brother, his best friend, looks him in the eye and calls him worthless. Stan snaps. He grabs the journal. Ford grabs for it. They struggle, and in the struggle, Ford falls backward, into the active portal. The machine wasn't supposed to be on. Ford had been trying to shut it down, not operate it. But in the fight, something was activated, and before Stan can do anything, before he can even process what's happening, his brother is pulled through a dimensional rift and disappears. The portal breaks, the machine goes dead, and Ford is gone. Try to imagine what Stan experiences in the moments after Ford disappears. His brother, the person he came all this way to see, is gone. The portal is broken. There's no way to bring Ford back, and it's Stan's fault. Again, just like the science project, just like everything else. Stan could have walked away. He could have left Gravity Falls and tried to forget. Who would have blamed him? The portal was broken beyond repair. Ford was gone to who knows where. There was nothing Stan could do, but Stan makes a different choice. He looks at the portal, he looks at the journals, and he decides that he's going to fix this. He's going to bring Ford back, no matter how long it takes, no matter what it costs. This decision will define the next 30 years of his life. Stan assumes Ford's identity. There's no other way. The townspeople know Ford, not Stan. If Stanley Pines suddenly appears and Stanford Pines suddenly disappears, there will be questions, investigations. The portal might be discovered and destroyed. So Stan fakes his own death. There's a car accident reported in the news. Stanley Pines is declared dead. And Stanford Pines continues living in Gravity Falls, running a tourist trap, acting like nothing unusual has happened. Think about what this costs him. Stan gives up his name, his identity, any chance of having his own life, his own relationships, his own future. Everything he is becomes subsumed into this mission. He tells himself it will only be for a few months, maybe a year. He'll figure out the portal, bring Ford back, and then things can go back to normal. He's wrong. It takes 30 years. 30 years. Try to comprehend what that means. Stan was in his 20s when Ford disappeared. He's in his 60s now. He spent his entire adult life on a single mission. He never married. He never had children. He never traveled or retired or pursued any dreams of his own. Everything was sacrificed for Ford, and nobody knew. Stan couldn't tell anyone what he was doing. The secret had to be absolute. So while he worked every night on the portal, teaching himself physics and engineering from Ford's notes, he had to maintain the fiction of being a simple conman during the day. He had to endure people thinking he was worthless while secretly being the most devoted brother in history. He had to pretend to be greedy and selfish while actually giving up everything for someone else. He had to live with the weight of his secret, the isolation of his mission, the constant fear that he would fail. There were nights, surely, when he wanted to give up, when the portal wouldn't work and the equations didn't make sense and Ford seemed impossibly far away. There were years that blurred together, decades of small progress and frequent setbacks, but Stan kept going. Every single night, for 30 years. That's not greed. That's not selfishness. That's love. Pure, stubborn, relentless love. When Ford finally steps through the portal, you might expect a joyful reunion. You might expect Ford to embrace his brother, to thank him for the 30 years of sacrifice, to acknowledge the enormity of what Stan has done. That's not what happens. Ford's first words to Stan aren't, "Thank you." They're not, "I missed you," or "I can't believe you did this for me." Ford's first words are angry. "What have you done?" Ford spent 30 years in dangerous dimensions, fighting for survival, struggling to find a way home. And from his perspective, Stan's activation of the portal was reckless. Stan risked the entire world to bring him back. Stan ignored Ford's explicit instructions to keep the portal shut down forever. Ford doesn't see Stan's sacrifice as heroic. He sees it as another one of Stan's screw-ups, another disaster caused by his troublemaker brother who never thinks about consequences. And Stan, who has waited 30 years for this moment, who has given up everything for this moment, has to stand there and be yelled at by the brother he saved. This is what makes Stan's story so uniquely painful. His sacrifice isn't recognized. His love isn't reciprocated. He gave everything for someone who doesn't seem to appreciate it. Watch Stan's face during this scene. Watch the hope drain out of him. He's been imagining this reunion for 30 years. He's dreamed about what Ford would say, how Ford would react, how they would finally be brothers again. Instead, he gets anger, disappointment, the same judgment he's been receiving his entire life. The episodes following Ford's return are, in many ways, harder to watch than the ones before. Because now we see Stan struggling with something he can't fix with hard work or determination. Ford doesn't want to be brothers anymore. Ford wants to stay in Gravity Falls, yes, but not to reconnect with Stan. He wants to continue his research. He wants to study anomalies. He wants to protect the world from Bill Cipher. Stan isn't part of that mission. Stan is an obstacle, an embarrassment, someone to be tolerated rather than embraced. Watch the body language in these episodes. Watch how Ford positions himself relative to Stan. He constantly turns away. He dismisses Stan's contributions. He makes decisions without consulting his brother. He treats Stan like a well-meaning but incompetent roommate rather than family. And Stan takes it. Stan, who spent 30 years working alone, who taught himself advanced physics and engineering, who solved problems that PhD scientists couldn't solve, who succeeded at the impossible task of reopening a dimensional portal. Stan stands there and lets his brother treat him like an idiot, because that's what Stan believes about himself. This is the wound that Philbrick Pines inflicted all those years ago. Stan was taught that he has no value. Ford was the smart one, the special one, the one who mattered. Stan was just the screw-up who broke things and made messes. And even though Stan's actions prove otherwise, even though he literally saved his brother from an interdimensional void, he can't shake that belief. He still sees himself through his father's eyes. One of the most painful subplots in Season 2 is the relationship that develops between Dipper and Ford. Dipper idolizes Ford instantly. Ford is the author of the journals, the brilliant scientist, the paranormal researcher, the adventurer who has been to other dimensions and survived. Ford is everything Dipper wants to be when he grows up. And Ford, for his part, sees something of himself in Dipper. The curiosity, the intelligence, the willingness to believe in mysteries. Ford takes Dipper under his wing. He shares his research. He offers to mentor Dipper. He gives Dipper the validation that Dipper has been seeking all summer. Now watch Stan during these scenes. Watch how Stan reacts when Dipper chooses to spend time with Ford instead of him. Watch the way his face falls for just a moment before he covers it with a joke. Watch how he pretends not to care while clearly caring deeply. Stan has been taking care of these kids all summer. He's grown to love them. And now Ford swoops in and takes the nephew who reminds Stan of himself, the one who's smart and curious and doesn't quite fit in. It's the science fair all over again. Stan is being replaced by his more impressive brother. The smart twin wins again. The screw-up is left behind. And once again, Stan doesn't fight it. He just steps aside and pretends it doesn't hurt. Because that's what Stan does. That's what Stan has always done. In the episode Dungeons, Dungeons, and More Dungeons, Ford offers to play a complicated fantasy game with Dipper. The game is intellectual, strategic, exactly the kind of thing Ford and Dipper would both enjoy. Stan is watching television. Lowbrow television. The kind of entertainment that doesn't require a genius IQ to appreciate. The contrast is deliberate. Ford and Dipper bond over intellectual pursuits. Stan sits alone with his simple pleasures. The message, whether intended or not, is that Stan doesn't belong in Ford's world. But here's the thing the show wants us to notice. Stan could have learned that game. Stan taught himself interdimensional physics. He could certainly learn the rules of a board game if he wanted to. He doesn't try because he's already been told he doesn't belong. He's internalized the message that intellectual things aren't for people like him. He's given up before he starts. In dungeons, and more dungeons, Stan and Ford's conflict comes to a head over something absurdly trivial. Stan wants to watch his television show, and Ford's game has taken over the living room. They argue. They escalate. Eventually, due to some magical mishap, a character from the game comes to life and threatens to kill everyone. But before that happens, we get some of the most honest dialogue between the brothers in the entire series. Stan accuses Ford of always thinking he's better than everyone else. Ford accuses Stan of never taking anything seriously. They're not really fighting about a board game or a television show. They're fighting about 30 years of resentment. And the thing is, they're both right. Ford does think he's smarter than Stan. Ford has always thought that. Their father reinforced it. Society reinforced it. Ford grew up being told he was special, and he believed it. Stan does use humor to deflect from serious situations. When things get emotional, when things get real, Stan cracks a joke. It's a defense mechanism developed over decades of being told his real self isn't good enough. They know each other well enough to hurt each other precisely. They know where the wounds are because they were there when the wounds were created. But they're also both wrong. Ford's intelligence didn't save him from Bill Cipher. Stan's stubbornness did. Ford built the portal, but Stan fixed it. Ford wrote the journals, but Stan protected them. At every crucial moment, it was Stan's virtues, his loyalty, his determination, his refusal to give up that saved the day. And Stan's jokes aren't just deflection, they're survival. They're how he's gotten through 30 years of isolation, how he's maintained his sanity while living under an assumed name and working on an impossible mission. Without that humor, without that ability to find something to laugh about, Stan would have broken years ago. They can't see the truth about each other because they're too wrapped up in their old dynamic. Ford is still the successful twin and Stan is still the screw-up. The labels were assigned in childhood and neither of them has figured out how to escape them. Throughout Season 2, there are things Stan clearly wants to say to Ford but can't bring himself to articulate. He wants to say he's sorry, not necessarily for activating the portal. He's not actually sorry about that, and neither should he be. But he wants to apologize for the science fair, for the accident that started everything, for being the screw-up brother who made Ford's life harder. He wants to say he missed Ford every day for 30 years. He wants Ford to know that he never stopped thinking about him, never stopped working for him, never stopped loving him even when it seemed like Ford had forgotten he existed. He wants to say that those 10 years of silence hurt, that he waited for Ford to reach out, to apologize, to show that he still cared, and the call never came. Not until Ford needed something. He wants to say that he's proud of Ford, proud of what Ford accomplished, proud of his brother's brilliance. He wants Ford to know that there was never jealousy, not really, just love, and a desperate wish to be worthy of being Ford's brother. And he wants to say he loves Ford, that despite everything, despite the years of separation and the painful reunion and the constant conflicts, Ford is still the most important person in his life. Stan would do it all again. The 30 years, the isolation, the sacrifice, he would do it all again in a heartbeat. But Stan doesn't say any of this. He can't. He spent too long building walls around himself. He spent too long pretending not to feel things. The vulnerability required to say these words is more than he can manage. So instead, he makes jokes. He picks fights. He pretends he doesn't care that Ford dismisses him. He hides behind the mask that's kept him safe for his entire life. And Ford, who is equally bad at emotional communication, responds in kind. Two brothers who love each other, unable to say it. Two brothers who've been waiting 30 years to reconnect, unable to bridge the gap. This is tragedy in its purest form. Not death, not disaster, but the inability of people who love each other to express that love. As the series builds toward its climax, the stakes become impossibly high. Bill Cipher has been manipulating events for years. He's been planning his invasion since before Ford first discovered him, and now he has what he needs to tear open a permanent rift between dimensions. Weirdmageddon is coming. The apocalypse is approaching, and Stan and Ford are still barely speaking to each other. This is the show forcing them to confront what they've been avoiding. The world is ending. There might not be a tomorrow. If there's anything left to say, anything left to heal, now is the time. But old habits die hard. Even with reality itself collapsing around them, the brothers struggle to connect. Ford focuses on the mission, on defeating Bill, on the technical aspects of survival. Stan focuses on protecting the kids, on keeping them safe, on the immediate practical concerns. They work in parallel rather than together. Two halves of a whole, refusing to unite. It takes the actual end of the world to break through their walls. In the finale, Ford reveals that there's a way to defeat Bill Cipher permanently. An ancient prophecy describes a zodiac circle with 10 symbols representing 10 people who must join hands and invoke a power greater than Bill's. The circle requires both Stan and Ford. They are two of the 10 symbols. They must work together, literally hold hands, put aside everything that divides them for even a moment. They can't do it. Even with Bill bearing down on them, even with the fate of the world in the balance, even with everyone they care about watching and depending on them, Stan and Ford can't stop bickering. Ford calls Stan by the wrong name. He calls him Stanley when the ritual needs Stanford, a subtle dig, a reminder that Stan has been living under a false identity. Stan snaps back. "You're the one who got us into this mess." They break the circle. The ritual fails. Bill scatters them before they can try again. This is the moment that damns them. Not Bill's power, not the apocalypse, their own inability to let go of decades-old grievances. The brothers who love each other doom the world because they can't stop fighting. And here's the cruel irony. They're fighting because they care. Stan is hurt that Ford doesn't appreciate his sacrifice. Ford is hurt that Stan won't acknowledge the consequences of activating the portal. They're both lashing out from pain, not malice. Love is what's destroying them. Love twisted into resentment, love curdled into competition, love that neither of them knows how to express properly. With the Zodiac failed, there's only one option left. Bill needs information from Ford's mind. Specifically, he needs the equation to collapse the barrier around gravity falls, which would allow Bill to spread his chaos across the entire world. Bill has captured Ford and is trying to extract this information. Stan comes up with a plan. It's insane. It's desperate. It requires a sacrifice that only Stan can make. The plan is simple in concept, devastating in execution. Stan will trick Bill into possessing him instead of Ford. Bill will enter Stan's mind, thinking he's getting Ford's knowledge. Then Ford will use the memory gun, the same device that McGucket used to erase his own memories, to erase Stan's mind completely. Bill will be erased along with Stan's memories. The demon will be destroyed, but so will Stan. Not Stan's body, his mind, his memories, his personality, everything that makes Stanley Pines who he is. 30 years of working to save Ford, a lifetime of experiences, the summer with Dipper and Mabel, the love he's never been able to express, all of it gone. Stan will survive physically, but the person inside will be empty. When Ford protests, when Ford says he can't erase his own brother's mind, Stan just smiles. "Let me tell you something, Ford," he says. "This whole time, I've been saying I was a screw-up and you were the smart one. But how many PhDs do I have? None. I couldn't even defeat Bill on my own. But you're the one who got possessed, you're the one who trusted him. I may have been a screw-up, but at least I wasn't stupid enough to trust a triangle." He's making jokes. Even now, at the end, he's making jokes, because that's how Stan deals with things he can't face directly. And then he says something that destroys me every time I hear it. "Look, Ford, you've always been the hero of this story. I'm just a lovable screw-up who happens to have good timing." Even at the end, even sacrificing himself to save the world, Stan can't accept that he has value. He still believes what his father told him. He still thinks Ford is the important one, the one who matters. He's wrong, of course. He's been the hero all along, but he can't see it. He'll never see it. The switch requires Ford and Stan to trade clothes, to become each other one last time. Stan puts on Ford's coat. Ford puts on Stan's fez. For a moment, they're identical again, just like they were as children, before the world taught them they were different. Bill takes the bait. He sees what appears to be Ford and possesses what he thinks is the brilliant scientist with the equation in his head. But it's Stan's mind he enters, Stan's memories, Stan's life. Ford raises the memory gun. "Stanley," he says, and there's something broken in his voice. "Do it," Stan says. "It's the only way." Ford pulls the trigger. We see what happens inside Stan's mind as the memory gun does its work. Bill realizes the trick too late. He's trapped in a mind that's being erased. There's no escape. The memory gun's energy is destroying everything, burning through the mindscape like fire. Bill screams. Bill burns. The demon who terrorized Ford for 30 years, who nearly destroyed the world, is finally destroyed himself. But we also see Stan's memories burning. We see the mystery shack collapse into nothing. We see the images of Dipper and Mabel fade and disappear. We see the 30 years of work on the portal crumble into ash. And we see Stan himself standing in the center of his own mind, watching everything he is disintegrate around him. He's not afraid. He's at peace. Because he finally did something that mattered. He finally proved, in a way that can't be denied, that he has value. The screw-up saved the world. When Stan wakes up, he doesn't recognize anyone. Mabel runs to him, crying, calling his name. He looks at her blankly. He doesn't know her. He doesn't know where he is. He doesn't know his own name. Ford approaches, guilt and grief warring on his face. "Stanley," he says, "it's me. It's Ford, your brother." Stan looks at him with no recognition. "I don't have a brother." This is the cost of victory. Bill is gone. The world is saved, but Stanley Pines, the man who made it possible, is gone too. Not dead. That might almost be easier. Just empty. A body without a self. Dipper and Mabel are devastated. Ford is devastated. They won, but the victory feels like defeat. Of course, this is Gravity Falls, and Gravity Falls believes in happy endings for people who have suffered greatly. Mabel doesn't give up. She refuses to accept that Stan is gone forever. She pulls out her scrapbook, the book she's been filling all summer with photographs and mementos and memories of their time together. She shows Stan the pictures. She tells him the stories. She reminds him, piece by piece, of who he is and who he loves. And slowly, impossibly, Stan starts to remember. It begins with small things. A spark of recognition when he sees a photograph of the mystery shack. A flicker of something when Mabel says his name. The memories aren't destroyed. They're just buried, disconnected, scattered by the memory gun. Love puts them back together. The connections Stan made, the family he built, the relationships that matter more than anything, they're strong enough to rebuild him from nothing. Mabel's scrapbook isn't just a collection of pictures. It's proof that Stan's life mattered. It's evidence of every moment of joy and connection he experienced over the summer. And that evidence is enough. Stan comes back. Not all at once. It takes time, it takes patience, it takes the sustained effort of everyone who loves him. But he comes back. The show earns this ending. It's not a cheap resurrection or a deus ex machina. It's the logical conclusion of everything the show has been about. Gravity Falls is, at its core, a show about family, about the connections between people, about how love can overcome anything, even the impossible. Stan spent 30 years trying to rescue Ford through technology and determination. Ford was rescued in the end by love. Mabel's love for her grunkle, Dipper's love for the family he found, Ford's love for the brother he almost lost. With Stan restored, the brothers finally have the conversation they should have had 30 years ago. Ford apologizes. Actually, apologizes, without qualification or deflection. He apologizes for not defending Stan when their father kicked him out, for the 10 years of silence, for treating Stan like a screw-up even after Stan proved he was anything but. "You saved me," Ford says. "You saved everyone. I was wrong about you. I was always wrong about you." And Stan forgives him, instantly, completely, because that's who Stan is. He's been waiting 30 years to hear those words, but he would have forgiven Ford without them. He would have forgiven Ford anything. They embrace. For the first time since they were children, they hold each other like brothers, like family, and they make a plan. Remember the boat from their childhood? The Stan O'War, the broken-down vessel they were going to fix up and sail around the world? They build a new one, the Stan O'War 2. The finale shows them setting off on the adventure they dreamed about 50 years ago. Two old men, finally reconciled, finally at peace, sailing into the unknown together. It's the ending Stan deserves. After everything he suffered, after everything he sacrificed, he gets this. He gets his brother back. He gets the adventure he dreamed about as a child. He gets to know, finally, that he matters. The image of Stan and Ford on that boat, sailing toward the horizon, is one of the most emotionally satisfying conclusions in animation history. It's catharsis for a character who has earned catharsis. It's joy for a man who has known mostly pain. Now let me walk you through the series chronologically and identify every specific moment that should make you feel for Stan. Every scene, every line, every look that reveals the pain beneath the jokes. Episode 1. Tourist Trapped. The first time we see Stan alone at night, descending into his secret basement. There's no comedy here, just a lonely man with a secret he can't share. Episode 2. The Legend of the Gobblewonker. Stan's excitement about the fishing trip, his hurt when the kids ditch him, the license plate that says STNLYMBL, Stanley Mobile, not Stanford Mobile. Episode 3, Headhunters. Stan's genuine attachment to the wax figure, his grief when it's destroyed. The first sign that beneath the gruff exterior, Stan is desperate for connection. Episode 4, The Hand That Rocks the Mabel. Stan's desperation to compete with Gideon for tourists. Not greed, fear. Fear of losing the shack, fear of losing the portal, fear of failing Ford. Episode 7, Double Dipper. A brief moment where Stan seems worried about whether the kids really like him, covered quickly with a joke. But the worry is real. Episode 9, The Time Traveler's Pig. A glimpse of young Stan through time travel. He already looks tired. He's already been working on the portal for years. The burden is visible. Episode 12, Summerween. Stan's reluctance to participate in holiday celebrations. 30 years of spending holidays alone have made him unable to enjoy them. Episode 13, Boss Mabel. The full scope of Stan's financial struggles revealed. He works constantly, he never rests. Every dollar goes to the mission. Episode 16, Carpet Diem. The glasses scene. Stan holding Ford's glasses with that expression of devastating grief. The first time we see the mask slip completely. Episode 17, Boys Crazy. Stan trying to bond with Dipper. A genuine moment of connection between them. Then it passes, and Stan is alone again with his secrets. Episode 19, Dreamscaperers. The revelation of Stan's childhood trauma, his father's cruelty, the wound that never healed. Bill Cipher using Stan's deepest shame as a weapon because it still hurts. Episode 20, Gideon Rises. Stan losing the shack. Genuine despair on his face. Not about money, about the mission, about Ford, about 30 years of work potentially destroyed. Episode 1, Scary Oak. Government agents investigating the shack. Stan terrified that his secret will be discovered just as he's about to succeed. The tension of being so close and so vulnerable. Episode 2, Into the Bunker. More evidence of Ford's life, Ford's work, Ford's world, all of it maintained by Stan for 30 years, a constant reminder of what he's fighting for. Episode 7, Society of the Blind Eye. The reveal of McGuckett's connection to Ford. Stan has watched McGuckett deteriorate for 30 years. Another reminder of what Ford's work cost. Another burden of guilt. Episode 11, Not What He Seems. Everything. The arrest, the accusations. The kids learning the truth. Mabel's choice. The portal. Ford's return. Stan falling to his knees, crying after 30 years. Episode 12, A Tale of Two Stans. The full flashback. The childhood bond. The broken science project, their father's cruelty, the exile, the lost decade, the accident, the portal, 30 years of solitary sacrifice. Watch Stan's face while he tells this story. He's reliving the worst moments of his life in front of the kids, exposing his shame because they deserve the truth. Episode 13, Dungeons, Dungeons, and More Dungeons. Ford's dismissiveness. The way Ford talks to Stan like he's stupid. Stan accepting it because he believes he deserves it. Episode 14, The Stanturian Candidate. Stan trying to prove himself through politics, trying to be successful at something legitimate. Ford dismissing it as a waste of time. Episode 15, The Last Mabel Corn. Ford shutting Stan out of important research, not trusting him with crucial information, treating him as a liability. Episode 17, Dipper and Mabel versus the future. Ford offering Dipper the apprenticeship. Stan watching the nephew, who's most like him, be drawn to Ford instead. The science fair happening again. Episodes 18 to 20. Weirdmageddon. The apocalypse. The failed Zodiac. The sacrifice. The memory gun. Stan's acceptance of erasure as the price of victory. And then, miraculously, the return through love. Stan Pines resonates because his core wound is universal. Almost everyone has felt at some point that they're not good enough, that they're the screw-up of their family, that no matter what they do, they'll never measure up to expectations. Stan lives with this feeling every day of his life. It was put there by his father and reinforced by decades of failure. And even when he succeeds spectacularly, saving his brother, saving the world, he can't quite believe it. The wound is too deep. This is why we feel for him. We recognize that wound. We know what it's like to minimize our own achievements, to assume the worst about ourselves, to believe the negative things people have said about us, even when evidence contradicts them. Stan's story is ultimately a story about learning that those negative beliefs are wrong. It takes him 60 years and the literal apocalypse, but he gets there. He finally understands that he has value. He finally hears the words he's been waiting his whole life to hear. And if Stan can learn that lesson, maybe we can too. Stan's tragedy is compounded by his mask. He can't show vulnerability because vulnerability has always led to pain. So he hides behind jokes, behind gruffness, behind the persona of the greedy conman who doesn't care about anything but money. This mask serves him well in some ways. It protects him from being hurt further. It lets him function in a world that has been cruel to him. It's armor, and armor has its uses. But the mask also isolates him. No one knows the real Stan because Stan won't let them see. The kids think he's just their grumpy uncle. The townspeople think he's just a scam artist. Even Ford, who should know better, struggles to see past the mask to the brother underneath. Stan's greatest tragedy isn't the 30 years of isolation. It's that even when he's surrounded by people who love him, he can't let himself be fully seen. He can't accept their love completely because he doesn't believe he deserves it. How many of us do the same thing? How many of us hide behind masks, humor, cynicism, detachment, because we're afraid of being truly known? How many of us push people away because we don't think we're worthy of their affection? Stan shows us the cost of this protection. Yes, the mask keeps pain out, but it also keeps love out, and a life lived behind a mask, no matter how successful, is ultimately a lonely life. The ending of Gravity Falls offers Stan something that we all secretly hope for: validation. After everything, the sacrifice, the memory loss, the terror of oblivion, Stan is restored. He gets to keep his memories, his relationships, his self, and he gets something even more precious: recognition. Ford finally sees him, really sees him. Not as the screw-up brother, but as the hero he's always been. The kids see him. They know what he did. They love him for it. The town sees him, the man who saved them all. For the first time in his life, Stan doesn't have to hide. He can be who he really is, and the people around him will appreciate him for it. This is the redemption we all hope for. The moment when the world finally sees our true value. The moment when the people we love acknowledge our sacrifices. The moment when we can stop pretending and just be ourselves. Most of us never get this moment. Not completely. Life is messier than fiction. But Gravity Falls gives it to Stan, and in doing so, gives it vicariously to us. Gravity Falls gives Stan the ending he deserves. After the apocalypse is averted, after his memories are restored, after the reconciliation with Ford, Stan gets to live his dream. The Stan-O-War 2 sets sail. Two brothers, finally reunited, finally at peace, finally going on the adventure they dreamed about as children. This ending is earned. The show puts Stan through 60 years of suffering before allowing him this happiness. It would have been cheap if he'd gotten it easily. But he didn't. He fought for it. He sacrificed for it. He earned it through 30 years of solitary devotion. That's why the ending hits so hard. Because we watched him suffer. Because we know what he went through. Because we understand the weight of what he's finally putting down. Stan Pines gets to be happy. After everything, he gets to be happy. And that gives us hope that maybe, after everything we've been through, we can be happy too. So that's every time Gravity Falls made us feel bad for Stan Pines. Every subtle hint in Season 1. Every devastating revelation in Season 2. Every moment of pain and sacrifice and eventual redemption. Stan Pines is one of the greatest characters in animation history. Not because he's powerful or clever or morally perfect, he's none of those things. But because he's human. Because his flaws are recognizable and his wounds are universal. Because his story shows us that people can be broken and still become heroes. If you're still awake, I hope this video helped you appreciate Stan's character even more. And if you're drifting off to sleep, I hope you dream about Stan and Ford on their boat, sailing toward adventure, finally at peace. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being part of this community. And remember, you're not a screw-up. You've never been a screw-up. The people who told you otherwise were wrong. Sleep well, everyone. But before I go, I'd just like to kindly ask you all to subscribe. It's completely free. and it really helps us improve the videos for this wonderful community we've managed to build. Good night.